So we've been talking about the prospect of a deal. It feels like we're in a very different position than last week. It does feel as if there are more optimistic noises coming through. Is there any chance that the Lib Dems could back that deal if it was, for example, put to a referendum?
Look, Liberal Democrats will always vote for amendments in support of a people's vote. We've been backing a people's vote for the last 3 or so years, and we think that that is the best way for the public to have the final say on what happens next with Brexit. But let's be clear what we're looking at here. This deal, obviously, details to be confirmed, but it looks like very much the free trade agreement type proposal that was put forward in November 2018 that the government's own analysis showed would be catastrophic, that it would be worse than the financial crash in terms of the contraction in the economy. That is not something that any government should be responsibly putting forward on a voluntary basis.
I just want to really try and nail you down on the beginning of your answer here. Are you saying then, if, for example, the deal was going to be put to a confirmatory referendum, you could back that next week in the Commons?
So we will always support an amendment that says that there should be a people's vote. I've not heard anything from the Prime Minister that suggests that that is what he would do. But we should look at the indicative votes from March, where 280 MPs did back a people's vote. So ultimately, we want a deal to be put to the public so that they can have the final say. And Liberal Democrats will campaign strongly to remain, because we believe that there is no possible deal that we could get that is better than the deal that we have as members of the European Union. And the public need to have the choice to decide whether or not they want this ridiculous deal that Boris is cooking up, or indeed Theresa May's deal.
Although we haven't seen
whether they want to
details of the deal, have we? It's a bit premature to call it ridiculous.
It does look like it's going to be a very hard Brexit for at least GB, possibly with some changes in Northern Ireland. But that's going to cost jobs. It's going to be problematic for our NHS. We've already got 5,000 nurses from the EU lost from our NHS at a time when there are nursing shortages. That is having a real impact already on our NHS.
Jeremy Corbyn, in my interview earlier, said he would caution MPs against backing a confirmatory referendum. So is he wrong then?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is all over the place. So yes, typically he's wrong. But his party are wanting to negotiate Brexit. They want to get a Brexit deal, and what we want is to stop Brexit. We think that it's going to be bad for our country, for jobs, for public services.
They back a second referendum.
Well, apparently, but we'll see. Certainly there's been some Labour MPs who have not done so. So they say that they're backing that, but let's look at their actions. Jeremy Corbyn was calling for Article 50 to be triggered the day after the referendum. He's somebody who's said that he wants to deliver a Brexit, and it doesn't matter if you put a red rosette on it or a blue rosette on it. Brexit is still going to be bad for our country.
Let's look at the Lib Dems' position, shall we? Because you've said that if you win power, which I accept is perhaps a tall ask at the next election, you would want to revoke Article 50. How can you really have Democrats in your party name if you want to overturn the result of the referendum without even putting it back to the people?
Well, as I've just said, we want to put this back to the people through a people's vote.
But you've said that you want to revoke.
But if it so happens that there isn't a referendum on a Brexit deal, and instead we are in a general election scenario, then we think that the public need to have the ability to choose that they want to stop Brexit in such a general election. And as Liberal Democrats, we will give them that choice by saying, if you elect a Liberal Democrat government, then we will revoke Article 50. And if people democratically choose to elect a Liberal Democrat government in that scenario, then I think people will then expect us to revoke Article 50, which is exactly what we will do.
We were talking a bit earlier about what will happen if a deal is brought back. If a deal isn't brought back by the end of the week, according to the Ben Act, Boris Johnson needs to request an extension. If he doesn't do that, there may then be a confidence vote in his leadership, an interim Prime Minister coming forward to request an extension. Jeremy Corbyn says that should be him. He's right, isn't he? He's the leader of the opposition. Why won't you back him?
Well, he doesn't have the numbers, which I understand.
It's because of you.
Well, it's not actually. If you add up the numbers, even without the Liberal Democrats, he's far short of it. And let's remember why he is far short. Part of that is because there are people who were Labour MPs who have left the Labour Party because of their failure to deal with anti-Semitism. We're not talking about, something that is, irrelevant or minor. We're talking about something which is about the fundamental value of whether people are treated with equality. So, there's very good reasons people have for saying that they won't back Jeremy Corbyn. And I think we need to find, in those circumstances, a solution that works. And I think there's a wide range of people who could lead such a government. I put forward the ideas of Ken Clarke or Harriet Harman, but if you look at others who have been long respected MPs, there's people like Margaret Beckett. I mean, there's lots of people who are that little bit above party politics who could, in an emergency scenario, step in. And we need to have that as an insurance option. But let's remember, Boris Johnson should obey the law, and he has now given an undertaking to a court that he will send that letter. So I think that the way in which MPs were able to work together cross-party to pass that legislation to try to remove the threat of no deal was a very important piece of cross-party working.
There could be an election sooner rather than later, and that election could very well produce a hung parliament if the polls are right. Are there any circumstances that you would back a Jeremy Corbyn government?
No, Jeremy Corbyn is not fit to be Prime Minister. Boris Johnson is not fit to be Prime Minister, and the country deserves a better choice than either of those two individuals.
So why should anyone vote for you? If you're just saying, look, we're not going to get involved in any of it, we won't support this person, we won't support this person, what is the point of the Liberal Democrats?
The point of the Liberal Democrats is to make sure that people can vote for a party that will stop Brexit and then go about transforming our country, making our economy fairer, tackling the climate emergency, to actually be able to have a country that people can enjoy and have good quality of life. At the moment, Brexit is sucking the life out of our politics. It is something which is going to harm our economy and our public services.
It's giving you a bit of a boost.
Well, we're really clear on the matter, and the reason that it's given us a boost is that there are millions of people out there in the country who are in despair of this prospect of leaving the European Union, whether that's the people who are worried about their friends and neighbours who are EU citizens from the other 27 countries, whether that's people who are worried about their jobs, whether that's people who just see that we should be an open and fair and inclusive country and we should be working with other countries to solve our shared problems rather than pulling up the drawbridge.
So what would be a good night for the Liberal Democrats at an election?
Electing a Liberal Democrat majority government with me as Prime Minister.
And what do you think the odds of that are, really?
Well, I think it's entirely possible. We're in a very volatile time in our politics. As I say, there are people who have left the Labour Party, people who have left the Conservative Party, as MPs and indeed as members and as voters. We beat both the Conservative and Labour parties at the European elections. The Liberal Democrats...
It's quite different to a general election though, isn't it?
Well, it is.
You and I know that.
Of course it is, but these are volatile times in politics. And the reason that there's a big change is that the fault line has shifted. It's not about left-right anymore. It is that fundamental difference about whether it's standing up for liberal values against authoritarianism, whether your approach is an open one or a closed one. And the Liberal Democrats are firmly on one side of that divide. And both the Conservatives and Labour parties are struggling because they are divided.
Are you expecting more defections?
I'm always hopeful. I speak with lots of MPs who are unhappy in their current parties. And of course, it's a very personal decision, a personal journey for people to make. So we were delighted to welcome Heidi Allen to the Liberal Democrats just a few days ago.
She said that there are more Conservatives who could be coming your way. Is she right, or is that a little bit optimistic? I'm
not going to go into the details of private conversations. You'll understand that. But I mean, I would certainly say I'm still having conversations, and indeed people in the Labour Party are very unhappy too, for not just the reasons that I mentioned about Corbyn's inability to tackle anti-Semitism, but also their failure on Brexit. You know, the biggest issue of the day, where the leader of the opposition can't even stand up for the national interest and say that we should stop Brexit. It's the Liberal Democrats that are doing
he
that.
does have, to be fair, they are now saying that they want to see a referendum. I mean, that is a clear position, isn't it?
He's been dragged kicking and screaming to that position, and he still won't say what side he would campaign on in such a referendum, because ultimately he wants Brexit to happen. I can't see any other explanation for it.
Well, I've got you. Just want to ask you one more question off the back